Hi guys. Looks like I've been having trouble recording today. I think I finally resolved the tech issues. So what I'm going to do, as you know, the weather caused us to cancel school, but we were expected to have a virtual meeting. So I want to give you at least some heads up on to the material we'll be covering tomorrow. It's just a quick preview of the items within the material. So, to start out with, the reading is the Allegory of the Cave by Plato. But in order to break that down, I need to give you some preliminary information. So in this case, if you've glanced at the document already, you notice that one of the speaking characters is Socrates. So, Socrates, some important information. This characterization is one of the few bits of information that we have regarding the philosopher. Okay, so part of the reason is this bullet point right here. All information we have about him is secondhand because he did not want to leave any written documentation behind. Okay? The reason for that is this bullet point. He basically felt that writing and reading weakens the academic study brain, and weakens the whole rhetoric of politicians and debate. He had some strong feelings about reading and writing. Everything had to be done, studies had to be done by memorization. Okay, strict memorization. So if you look at the history of writing, how it developed, and the methods and process behind it, in the beginning, way back in around 3,400, that's when Mesopotamia developed cuneiform writing. Okay, so that's 3,000 years before Socrates, basically. And we have artifacts from the time period which show the shards of material that resulted from the early writing period. And what you have are a lot of commercial practices. Nothing artistic, nothing philosophical. It's all commerce, business deals, real estate exchanges, okay? Contracts of formal legal processes. There are a few letters to families and friends, but for the most part, what it comes down to is that writing in the early centuries was meant as a legal record. It wasn't meant for intellectual pursuits. Now, of course, this is going by the material we have found. So that may be an inaccurate view. But as the case may be, it seems to not have been of philosophical nature. Okay, so that's one point to consider why Socrates had a negative view of the whole communication form. The second thing I want to present to you, Socrates is not the beginning of philosophy. He's the beginning of a new approach to philosophy. Okay, so right here I have a bullet point talking about pre-Socratic times. The pre-Socratic era of philosophy is basically the philosophers who lived right before Socrates in the 6th century up to his contemporaries. Okay, so that era is called pre-Socratic. It emphasizes basically his influence on philosophy. So when we talk Western civilization, the basic foundations of our culture that comes from the Greeks does start with the pre-Socratic concepts. Okay, so don't discredit them or think they are lesser than the Socratic methods. They basically were questioning things in a different fashion, and they were exploring less moral issues and more on the elemental makeup of reality, or of the universe. They were trying to uncover what was the first principle of the universe. What's the basic compound of the universe? And then by the time Socrates comes along, he's rethinking the whole purpose of philosophy and the whole method for these questions. Okay? And for education is what it comes down to. So when you use the term pre-Socratic, as the Stanford University's website mentioned, some scholars avoid the term. So unless you are referring to the early Greek thinkers who were not influenced by Socrates' views, you're fine. Okay? There's no harm in using it if you're using the word as in terms of placement of the transformation of philosophy over time. Okay? So if you read this full block quote that I've placed here, it's bringing up other issues that can develop if you use that word. Okay? So, just as an FYI, I've listed 14 other philosophers who are contemporaries of Socrates or were before his time. And these are considered the pre-Socratic philosophers. So right here in gold, obviously, is Socrates. So we have a few before his time and a few after his time. I'm not going to test you over these people. A few of them may pop up in conversation later as we go through the course. Okay? So, back to Socrates himself. Now, because Socrates did not leave behind written records of his own views and of his lectures, okay, we only know of him through a contemporary playwright and former students, one of which is Plato. Okay, so our views of Socrates are secondhand. Okay, because the majority of our information is based from Platonic information, Platonic records, his construction of his teacher, this raises a question of accuracy and authenticity. How much is the Platonic view of Socrates depicting the Socratic values that Plato is stating existed? Okay. So because of this, some critics like to refer to the character within Platonic writing as a Socrates-Plato, not as Socrates. Okay, so you may, if you do more research on the subject, you might bump into that name of the character. There are some bits and pieces that we can see from Plato that seem authentic. He took a vow of poverty, and according to Plato, Socrates never accepted payment for his teachings. Likewise, his method of teaching dealt with asking very detailed questions, all in order to make you start questioning, as a listener, you start questioning what you think you know. And as a result, and this is the big shift in the education process, even today, it's a major point of emphasis. An individual begins to teach themselves because they have started to question their own intellect, their own level of understanding for a subject. Okay? Or they may start developing a stronger definition of virtue through these questions. So it is called the Socratic method, and it's been used in classes in your lifetime. It's a skill for an instructor to be able to utilize it, but the end result is you start developing stronger methods for teaching yourself through the instructor's process. Okay, so that's Socrates. What's important about Plato in terms of the allegory of the cave, this is a slim portion of a full work called the Republic. Okay? Within this text, it's examining how to make a perfect society. So within the text, ultimately, one of the main points of it is that the people of society must choose a wise ruler. So keep in mind what we went over yesterday about absolutism. Okay, what Plato is proposing, the wise ruler would have to be more analytical and less militaristic, and more abstract and more processing of reactions, and therefore become what is called a philosopher king, so that their intellect is guiding the nation. Another objective of the book is to define what justice actually is, to give it a more solid determination. Okay. In that process, you're exploring why justice is a necessity for society, or for, as I put here, for humanity. Why do humans seem to lack a perfect justice system? Okay. So those are the two main overreaching goals of the full text. So when we get to the allegory of the cave, I want you to read it. It's short enough that you could read it in full, but considering the time, check it out, see how you feel about it. It is very symbolic, and so at times it can be slightly confusing, but what Plato, his aim is for you to place definitions on the symbols he's using, and I'll explain more about that tomorrow during class. And you'll see it presented to you as a dialogue. You'll have Socrates / Plato talking with a student, Glaison, and explaining all the important values and situations that help develop a perfect society. Okay? So while you're reading the text, these are questions I want you to have in mind. I'm not collecting them later. I just want you to have these in mind. This is sort of like the theme of what Wednesday will be like. These are the sort of materials we'll be covering. Okay? How the Socrates-Plato character is develop a new concept of education. Okay? How the various symbols explain Plato, the author's concept of truth. Okay? So again, this was rather short and quick. As I opened up, I had tech issues, so I think we've got those resolved. It's still raining, but I want you guys to be safe. do check out your studies, keep everything going. And as always, if you have any questions, just drop me a line, and we'll try to resolve any situations that come up. So, again, as always, as I say, be safe.